because that kind of dominance, that kind of grappling.
Heading into UFC 319, plenty of fans thought Dricus had a real shot. After all, Chimaev had shown cracks in the past, slowing down in later rounds against Gilbert Burns at welterweight, and looking fatigued at middleweight against Kamaru Usman. Some believed if Du Plessis could survive the early storm, he might drag Hamzat into deep waters. But that prediction couldn't have been more wrong. From the opening bell, Chimaev shot for the takedown and imposed his will instantly. It was like watching a replay of the same round, over and over, every attempt from Dricus to get back up. Every moment of hope was smothered under the weight of Hamzat's pressure. What we got was 25 minutes of complete control. Crucifix position after crucifix position, relentless top game, and suffocating dominance. At times, it felt like Du Plessis wasn't even fighting back because he couldn't. This wasn't just a victory, it was a message. Hamzat Chimaev isn't just the best middleweight right now. He looked inevitable, almost untouchable. Now here's where the debate begins. On paper, Hamzat's win was flawless. Statistically, it's one of the most lopsided title challenges in UFC history. Right up there with Usman over Woodley, RDA against Pettis, or Strickland dismantling Adesanya. The numbers don't lie. Takedown success, control time, strike differential, everything tilted completely in Hamzat's favor.
That kind of dominance, that kind of grappling dominance was not just a level, it was multiple levels.
But if we're being honest, the fight wasn't fun to watch. For long stretches, Chimaev held Dricus in crucifix and chipped away with safe shots. Technically brilliant? Absolutely. But it left fans sitting through 25 minutes of one-sided control with little suspense about the outcome. Even the host of ITP MMA Live admitted, "I love wrestling, but this one bored me." And that's the dilemma. You can respect the skill and dominance while still asking yourself, did you enjoy watching it? For the first time in his UFC career, Hamzat's performance felt less like chaos and violence, and more like inevitability. Instead of highlight reel finishes, we got smothering efficiency. Instead of drama, we got certainty. And while that proves just how good he really is, it also sparks the question, will the Hamzat Chimaev era actually be entertaining for fans? And that brings us to the big picture. Hamzat Chimaev isn't just the champion. He might be the most unavoidable problem the middleweight division has ever seen. Look down the rankings, and the matchups don't get any better for his opponents. Du Plessis was one of the few fighters thought to have the size, durability, and grit to give him trouble. And we just saw how that ended. Strikers like Nassourdine Imavov or Kyle Burrell, they'll get dragged to the mat and drowned. Even experienced grapplers like Robert Whittaker or Marvin Vettori would likely spend most of the fight on their back. The truth is, Hamzat looks like stylistic kryptonite for 95% of the division. Unless a once-in-a-generation athlete shows up, someone big, explosive, with elite boxing and a dangerous guard, the belt isn't going anywhere. But here's the real concern. Will he even defend it often enough for us to find out? Hamzat has struggled with long layoffs before, and history tells us inactive contenders don't suddenly become active champions. Fans and analysts are already worried we could be heading into a new era where the middleweight belt is defended just once a year, maybe less. That's where the excitement of dominance collides with the frustration of inactivity, because being untouchable is one thing. But being untouchable and absent, that could stall the entire division. Just a few months ago, the middleweight division felt like the Wild West. Dricus Du Plessis was an unpredictable champion. Awkward, chaotic, and reckless, in a way that made every fight must-see TV. He wasn't polished, he wasn't conventional, and half the time it looked like he didn't even know what he was doing. But that unpredictability was his magic. It turned doubters into fans, because no matter how sloppy it looked, Dricus found ways to win. Now, the DDP era is over, and the Hamzat era has begun, and the contrast couldn't be sharper. Du Plessis gave us drama, chaos, and moments that had fans on the edge of their seats. Hamzat gives us dominance, certainty, and control, so suffocating it feels inevitable from the first takedown. The big question is, which do fans prefer? Do they want a champion who brings chaos, even if it means inconsistency? Or do they want a champion who crushes everyone, even if it means predictable, one-sided fights? Hit the like button and leave your comment below. For many, Du Plessis represented possibility.
Something else, bro. For so long we thought he just was bad. He's not. He's really good. He's like really, really good.
That anyone, even the underdog with the dockyard boxing style, could climb to the top. Chimaev represents inevitability, that no one can stop the force that's already here. The enigma of Dricus is gone, and in its place, the reign of inevitability begins. If there's one thing fans dread more than a dominant champion, it's a dominant champion who barely defends. And that's where the real concern with Hamzat Chimaev lies. We've already seen this pattern before. Long layoffs, fights falling through, and a career slowed down by injuries, illness, or outside factors. The reality is Chimaev has never been the most consistent when it comes to showing up regularly. And history shows us that fighters who struggle to stay active before winning the belt don't suddenly become workhorses once they're champion. Analyst Dean Thomas even warned before the fight, if Hamzat wins, it could actually be a disaster for the division. Why? Because movement stops when the champion doesn't defend. Divisions stagnate, contenders sit idle, and the sport suffers. The middleweight division has already seen long stretches of inactivity in the past. If Chimaev fights only once a year, or worse, we could be in for another era of waiting, stalling, and frustration. Now maybe he proves everyone wrong. Maybe Hamzat goes on to defend twice a year, every year, and builds a legendary reign. But right now, the safer bet is that he disappears for months at a time, only to return for a single fight. Fights that, based on what we saw against Dricus, may not exactly deliver fireworks. And that's the nightmare scenario. A champion who is both unbeatable and inactive. Now, let's be clear. None of this is meant to take away from how brilliant Hamzat Chimaev is as a fighter. What he did to Dricus Du Plessis wasn't just dominance. It was historic. Very few champions in UFC history have looked this inevitable on the night they claimed gold. And honestly, not every champion has to be chaos in the octagon. Georges St-Pierre is one of the greatest of all time, yet most of his title defenses were tactical, calculated, and far from bangers. Fans still tuned in because they wanted to see greatness on display. Chimaev might end up being cut from that same cloth. A champion you don't watch for chaos, but for mastery. But that's where the tension lies. The Du Plessis era, for all its flaws, was fun. It was reckless. It was unpredictable. It was wild. Fans never knew what would happen when Dricus stepped into the cage, and that unpredictability made him magnetic. Now we shift to the Hamzat era, where unpredictability is gone, replaced by inevitability.
Clearly, he didn't bring in anybody that had that kind of skill.
Yeah, he needs to be wrestling more.
Chimaev's reign could last as long as he wants, and unless he slows down or burns out, the belt isn't going anywhere. The question is, will fans learn to love that inevitability or grow tired of it? For Dricus, the book isn't closed. He may never touch gold again while Hamzat rules, but he remains one of the most entertaining fighters in the division. Matchups with guys like Imavov, Boralo, or even RDR promise pure chaos. The DDP era was short, but it was unforgettable. Proof that sometimes unpredictability can take you all the way to the top. And now that chaos has given way to control. The Hamzat Chimaev era has begun. And that's where I'll leave it to you. Do you think Hamzat Chimaev's dominance is what the middleweight division needs? Or is it going to make the sport boring? Will he be an unstoppable must-watch champion? Or an inactive belt holder who stalls the division? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I really want to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to hit that like button. It helps the channel a ton. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss out on more deep dives into the biggest stories in MMA. This is only the beginning of the Hamzat Chimaev era, and whether you love it or hate it, we're all going to be watching closely. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in the next round.